All right, hello, hello. Okie dokie. Let's do it. Engobe. So I've got a cool terracotta engobe we're going to be using today. Now, if you joined last week, threw a bunch of kind of random stuff, a few cups in a bowl, and I'm basically going to show you how to go from a piece like this, untrimmed. Hello from Ontario, Canada. Welcome. All the way to, I just made this one. So this is a little carved cup with the terracotta engobe. I think this will look really cool because it's on this B mix, which will turn out that kind of creamy white. And then you have that really earthy terracotta color. And I'll probably just do like a clear on top when I glaze this. But just very earthy overall feeling. I haven't used a lot of engobes before. This is the first time I've really messed around with these. And I do like them a lot. So they're I mean, I treat them basically just as like a slip. And so I think putting it on a little bit thicker, like you do notice the difference between that and underglaze. I'm a big fan of these more than underglaze. It just feels better on the clay when you go carve. It carves, a lot cleaner. So there's something about just the feel of it that I think is really nice. So we'll experiment a little bit. um, black Engobes and clear glaze. I'm not sure. It could be, I wonder if it's the clay. Um, a lot of the time, so this is like a recycled B mix, but I was mentioning this last time. It's like very pure. So we use a lot of B mix for tiles and carving here in the studio, just for demos. And so all of our recycled clay is just like very nice B mix. And so check your clay. Um, oh, hello from Saudi Arabia. That's awesome. Whole other side of the world. Welcome. So we're going to be doing a lot of, so I'm going to do some trimming. We'll put the engobe on, we'll let it dry, and then we'll move over and do a quick little carving. Basically, I'll just repeat this, and I'll show you how to do it. And while I'm here, I'm just going to grab these couple little strips. Just like that. Okay. We're good. All right, so I'm going to set this up here. We'll get back to that. And this is before carving, and so you'll see all I do is a stripe on the outside here and then a circle on the bottom. If you can't hear me, I hope I'm connected. Let's see. Should be okay. All right, let me know if you still can't hear me. If not, you can just watch. We're going to be trimming. And we're going to point this down. Okay, good deal. I'm going to point this down a little bit so you can see. And so I'm going to trim this the same way that I did those others. Put a little bit of water. And I'm just feeling for when it starts to stick, just like that. Tap it on there. All right. So this small little bowl should be pretty straightforward. Let's see here. Yeah, so we'll just put a little foot on. I mostly use the T1 to start with all these. If you haven't watched me trim, T1 is this half dome shape. You can see it there. It's probably the most popular trimming tool. I recommend it all the time. It is one of the most popular trimming tools. Just great, kind of all around. If your clay is slightly soft or slightly too dry, it does fine. And I'm going to put a foot ring on here, and I'm working on the kick wheel, by the way. So if you hear some noise going on, that's why. I do like trimming on the kick wheel. Those of you who have done it know it feels a little bit different. And I always start kind of opening up the middle, and then I'm going to go down first and kind of set the bottom. Now, this is a little bit soft here, so I just got to be careful. And I was thinking about this earlier, but a lot of folks out there don't like trimming. I've talked to a lot of them, and it can be, I think, my view on that is I think sometimes people are afraid to really take away a lot of clay. They'll just kind of hold the tool and let this sort of ride on here, and you're not really trimming a whole lot. Like, I'm not really pressing very hard. It's just kind of, bouncing on there. uh, I always recommend, hold it like a pen, like you really are going to be precise, and then hold it with both hands. So you can be very firm, and you want to make sure that as you trim, the tool's not moving. You're rock solid, and that's going to really give you the nicest ribbons, and you're going to be able to remove a lot of clay. And so trimming is definitely one of my favorite parts. So we got the bottom in there, and I'm going to open this foot up just a little bit more. And one thing like I'm feeling is just this clay is a little wet, so it's more likely to kind of grab. If you ever have that issue, just try waiting a little bit. Not till it dries out. You don't want bone dry clay at all. But if the clay is too wet, you're gonna have issues. Got that, and then I'm gonna add just a little kind of a swooping foot. There we go. Get those out of there. So I think you can see here, but we've got a thin little foot, and then I'm gonna kind of round this out. So that's the bottom of my foot. I have the rim here. It's all bumpy, thick in between. So we're gonna switch over to the T7. So T7, it's this, call it the avocado shape. You got two radiuses on either end. Nice curve in the middle, but I like using this for any kind of like curved outer bowl shape. And I'm going to try to leave just a real little kind of ridge just right there, which you can see. So I'm going to make sure this outside piece is smooth, kind of one continuous curve. And then we got the foot right here. Just like that. So that feels pretty good. I always like some sort of distinction between the foot and the piece. On some of these others, it's a little bit different, but that way you always have something to grab, or if you're doing dishes, you can hold on to it there. You'd be surprised. So. Oh yeah, the foot wheel. It's fun. It's really nice. You don't have to go that fast, and a lot of the time, once you're trimming like this, you might be able to see a little bit in the corner there, but you can get a really gentle sort of kick just to keep it going. It doesn't take much. And then I'm just going to round out the top of the foot. So that's the 301. It's the foot trimming tool. Now you'll notice I didn't do the whole foot that way. I just use it to sort of round out that very like the bottom of the foot, the top of what you see here. I think that's just easier than trying to use a flat piece and trim it all the way over. Get that out of there. And then we're just about there. I'll just clean up the inside of the foot here. So you can't quite see that part, but it looks better now. So this is good. That's about good. I'm going to just sort of hit this right there. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to the small tool. So the 104, I use that the most for the small tools. It's got this little hook in it and easy to reach up under there. Oh, sorry, YouTube. I notoriously always show one camera but not the other. So there you go. And then we'll do a quick little round here. Okay, and then on these, what I've been doing is I use our metal rib to just sort of smooth things out a little bit. You can use a little stone or a rock or just about anything. Our metal rib works really well. I'll use the little corner to get the inside there, this little curve right here. Use the inner corner again. And then we will go all the way down. I went way too thin on the wall here, so we'll see if we can salvage it. So I can tell just by pushing in there. But I think it might be okay as long as we can get it off the wheel. And then we'll just touch barely. That right there. Okay. So the piece is done. Now I'm going to apply the Engobe. So we'll just use a little brush, rinse that off. So I'm going to do a little bit in the inside of the foot, and then we'll go on the outside to make those marks. And I do like the consistency of this. I'll hold this up. It's a little bit thicker than underglaze. You could even let this dry out a little bit more. I think it's a little bit easier to apply when it's slightly thicker, just because you get one full layer. If you get something that's too thin, sometimes the force of the brush will kind of like make a wake, or like, I don't know how to describe that very well, but it'll sort of squeegee the underglaze away from where you're trying to apply it. Whereas if it's thicker, it just sort of gobs on there really well. So yeah, I like putting these on slightly thicker. Works really well. You don't have to do as many layers. We'll do a little bit on the inside here. And I'm just about going to do probably one layer here. And I'll try to get up into that corner. And then I try to get as clean of a line as possible. So sometimes I'll just come back and tilt down, sort of roll the brush just like that. So that looks good. And then we got to hit it with the torch. So you don't have to do this, but otherwise you'd have to sit and wait for it to dry a little bit. I think it's always easier to put these on the wheel while you're trimming right away. And so it usually requires just a little bit of torching. So what's interesting about this part is if it gets to be a little thick, you got to torch it a lot. And the way that these are held onto the wheel, they're sort of held on by sealing the rim. And so if it happens quite often where I'll torch it for a little too long, it heats up all that air inside and then it'll pop the piece off. Or it'll actually, if there's a thin part anywhere, it'll burst out of that thin part. So I'm just going to try to not stay on here for too long. It's about all we need. And you can kind of tell when it goes from shiny to matte. That's when you know it's just dry enough. We'll do a little test. Feels good. And it's interesting because I sort of dented this when I was smoothing it, and just that enough pressure I can feel sort of pushed it back out, which is nice. All right, so then I come back with the 104, that little hook tip. And it doesn't need much, but we'll just clean up the edges a little bit. So we'll add, just a very, very subtle line. And I'll hold this up as soon as I'm done. So you can see it there a little bit. We did the inside, and then I'm going to just hit the edge of this slightly there. And then I'm going to add just in the bottom here. Again, it's hard to tell, even from that far away, but there's just a little bit of wave on that, and I'm just going to touch the edge of the Engobe there and clean it up so you get a nice clean edge. Just like that. All right, so this one is done. We'll slow her down. I think that looks good. And then if we can carefully pop it off, just like that. So wipe the rim, and I'm holding it from that nice foot there. So part 2 of this, and I'm going to do it right now, but I'm going to go trim this other cup, or sorry, carve this other cup. So you'll kind of get to see the whole thing at once. And so just from sealing it on, the rim always gets a little bit squished, but I just make sure to sponge that down. Any of this sponging I do final, I use the blue sponge. It's the smoothest, and it's perfect for just hitting on that rim. There we go. So I'll hold that up so you can kind of see the sharp line I trimmed there, and then the bottom there as well. So this is all ready. I will usually then set this aside just to kind of like equalize a little bit more. You kind of have a hot outside from getting that torch. But we'll let this sit up for a second, and then I'm going to go carve this other cup. So we're going to move over to the other spot. So bear with me here. We're going to go right over here, and then we'll switch this around. Okay. All right, so you should be able to see there. And we'll get nice and close for this. So it's been a minute since I've carved, especially with the circle rib, I think. So we'll be using that. So we're going to try to replicate this piece. These are the two, very similar, both the Terracotta Engobe. Both have a little bit of a little bit of color on the bottom. So first things first is to make this curve right here. And so that is done with the arc rib. And we'll do it on this one. And then I'll set these aside. So I'm doing that with the FP8. So it's our fine point tools. All of this kind of, you can call it sgraffito, carving through this. I use all the fine point tools. They just give you all the little shapes you need. And I'm going to hold the arc rib up, and actually I'll show you here first. So pretty much what I did was, you can see how right here, this is actually from the arc rib. So I'm just using this sort of middle groove. And we'll put this on. And we're just going to do a real quick, sort of from top all the way down. Through there. So just like that. That's all we're doing, just one arc. And then I move it over to where the center of the arc tool is right where I ended, and then we'll do it again. So move it over. Now, depending on the exact sort of size and sort of width of this, these two pieces are very, very similar. So we can do the same thing. And I do the same spacing all the way around. Usually at the end, you might have to just adjust a little bit, but generally works out. And this is the only part I use the carving rib for. It's just to kind of get that first initial spacing of everything. And so on this one, I can see I'm close to being done. So I'm just going to kind of split the middle a little bit. So we'll go right here. That way this one will fit. Okay, so just like that. And you can kind of see that is where it sort of bases. So that's kind of like a little bit of a scaffolding or a starting place to go off of. While I have that tool, I'll do the bottom. And so this one, I'm just going to eyeball some curves kind of in a similar way. Okay. And then I'm going to switch to the P21. So this is a small 1mm square. And this one is what I used for all of these other little lines. And so basically going to follow that arc I just did, going to follow it right on top, and then we'll come down the other way. So this is going to go in here, and I'm going to try to make this one smooth groove. So we're just going to carve like this. So we're just adding these little arcs like that. Okay, so those go all the way around. And then I'm going to add this one, which is going to kind of like continue that and go right there. So it's just like a little hook. So up close, that's what it looks like. And I'm being sure to leave a little bit of like a little bit of red there. So I made it all the way around, and then going to do the same thing and kind of continue this, and then this gets a curve that comes down like that. And then we'll clear that out. So that's the little piece I'm going for. So what this does is it creates a little spot here and a little spot there to kind of make some leaf shapes. So we'll do this on all of these. And even though this takes a little bit, it's probably my favorite type of carving. I just think some of the finished result is always worth it. Oh yeah, don't forget, if you have a finger brush, use a finger brush. There's only a couple, sometimes there's just a few little spots, so don't forget about our little finger brushes. Perfect to get in there, get those out. And I'm almost done with this piece, so this little area. So if you haven't seen one of these, oh, you know what? I'll put it there. One more here. Okay. So now that that is just about done, switch to the FP4. So this is the really, really fine tip V-tip. And clear this out. So this is, I think, kind of where the magic comes together. And let's see. I'm just going to add a little, so you'll see how these are kind of based. I'm just going to add a little sort of line there, and then some lines in the middle. So I'll just go like that. Quick one. And then here I'm going to add 2 lines to make basically 3 sections there. Just like that. Okay. So those are very thin. Then there's a couple ways to do this one. I'm choosing the FP2, which is, it's got this little tiny sort of like triangular blade on it. So this one is great for getting into these tight spots and then clearing some larger areas. So I'll start with these top little leaves, and all I'm going to do is just add a little, kind of a little swoosh. So if you look carefully, I just sort of rounded those corners off. That's sort of before and after. And it's really quick. You can do it in basically one motion with the FP2. So I'll do this to all of these on top first. And then I'm going to do the same thing to down here, except these are going to look a little bit more full round, just like that. So that's kind of before, and then after, just kind of round them out. Get in there, brush all those. Now the point of the FP2 is useful because you can actually get in these little lines. The other way you could do it is the FP7. It has a little bit different, kind of like a dome shape. So it would work, but because some of these lines are just so narrow, it's a little bit harder to get in there. So I'll try this for a little bit. Again, you just have to be a little bit more careful as you're starting, but it does work. Yeah, so in this particular case, the FP2 just works a little bit better to reach in there. Just like that. All right. And then we'll finish up the bottom. And the bottom, don't need too much. I'm just going to use the FP2 to go through and kind of copy what I did up above there. And there you have it. So you got the bottom and you have those two pieces. So we'll leave her there. We'll let this dry out all the way, and we might not do a glazing demo on showing these because it's just going to be clear, but I think these will turn out nicely. So next week I still have that closed form jar that would be fun to trim, and we'll put an engobe on that as well. And if you guys have any other ideas to use the engobes for, we'll do it. So we'll try to get a few more batches of just some neat carving, trimming, play with the engobes a little bit, and then we'll see how these turn out. So I think it'll be really cool. It'll be fun to kind of compare this to some of the underglazes, and we'll see what they do. So anyway, thanks for joining. Yeah, if you got any other questions, comment, we'll post this. And other than that, have a great rest of your Tuesday.